Right, here we go with help for homework 8. First question, it's quite a big question this week. Find the perpendicular bisector of the points A and B. Well, there's a little diagram showing you the points A and B. Now we want the perpendicular bisector, so we're looking for the midpoint and then the line which goes through that midpoint, which is perpendicular to the red line. So, perpendicular bisector, what's the stages for finding the equation of that? Well, as the name suggests, first thing we need to do is find the midpoint. Second thing we need to do is get the gradient of the line AB. Third thing, get the perpendicular gradient. And then the fourth thing, use your y minus b equals mx minus a to get the equation. Second part of the question asks you to find the points where that line crosses both the x and the y axis. Now, from your answer from the first part, you're going to have something like a times y times b times x equals c. Right, it's going to look like that. Now, to work out where a line crosses the y-axis, we put x equals 0. So basically the bx part disappears. So for to cross the y-axis, you're just going to end up with a times y equals c, so you can work out the y coordinate. And similarly, for where it crosses the x-axis, the y coordinate is 0. So the AY part is going to disappear. So you're going to be left with BX equals C, so you can work out what X is. Remember, A's and B's are numbers. It'll be easier once you actually do it with the numbers. Now once you've got those points, we're trying to find the equation of the circle which goes through those 2 points. So we're trying to find the equation of that circle there. So we need to find the midpoint of CD. This gives you the centre. Then we need to work out the radius, which is the distance from that midpoint to one of the points on the edges. So let's say we work out the distance from the centre to point C. That tells you what the radius is, and then you can plug all of that into your x plus a all squared y plus b all squared equals r squared formula. Question 2, recurrence relation. If you lose 10%, that means there's 90% left. So your recurrence relation is the amount of hair you've got next month is 0.9 of this month's plus the extra 200 that grow. Okay, now at this point we can go down 2 routes. We can either find the limit and see how that compares to 10,000 hairs to answer the question, or we can go down using the answer button on your calculator. And if you go through that, you can work out how much hair is left after 1 month, how much hair is left after 2 months, after 3 months, after 4 months, after 5 months, and so on, until it reaches 10,000 or falls below 10,000. Now it might never, in which case the limit would be the one to use, or it might, in which case it's the second one to use. So it's probably a good idea to actually try both methods. Question 3, the graphs. F of x minus 2 just means you move the graph down 2. F of x minus 2, when the 2 is inside the bracket, that means you move it right 2. So, if it was moved down 2, your original graph looked something like that. All you're doing is taking all of these points that you're given and moving them down 2. And once it's been moved down 2, then you can just draw it in. Okay? Same for when it's been moved right. Take your original graph, and then move everything right 2 places. Once you've moved it right 2 places, you can draw in what that looks like. The third part, which says negative 2 of f of negative x, well, remember the negative x inside the bracket, this here means flip in the y-axis. Okay, so it's going to get flipped left and right. Then the negative 2 on the outside means upside down, and the y coordinates are doubled. So let me do an easier example for you. Let's say we had this picture. Okay, that crosses at -3, -1, and this point here is -2, -2. Okay, first of all, if I flipped it in the axis, then it would look like that. Okay, this point here would become 2 -2, and this would be 1, this would be 3. And then if I flipped it upside down and doubled the y coordinates, these points don't change, but being flipped upside down, it goes like that, and this point up here would become 2, and double the y number would be 4 up. It's a bit messy in my diagram. Yours will be better because you just have one line. Question 4. Well, this is just a whole load of f of g of x's. Okay, we know how to do that. Put the g into the f formula. So you put x squared plus x into the f formula. So that's going to go in here. So that's going to be 3 lots of whatever's in the bracket. -2. Remember to remove the brackets and tidy up. And you just do that for each stage. Question 5, 2 circles. Let's work out the centre of the first circle. Let's work out its radius. Let's work out the centre of the second circle. Let's work out its radius. Then work out the distance between the centres. And then compare that distance, which if you remember it from the book was a big D, against the different radiuses. And if it's more than R1 plus R2, then that means it does not intersect. If it's less, then it does intersect. If it equals it, it touches it in one point. You have the conditions in your book to do the rest of that question. Number 6, maximum possible domain. I'm not really too interested on the top, because what this question is really asking us is, when is the function undefined? It's undefined when x squared plus 4x minus 5 is equal to 0. So we need to factorise this, work out what the x numbers are, and then use your set builder notation. The answers are the domain are x, as long as x is an element of the real numbers, and then what conditions is there on the x's. Check back your jotter. Number 7, maximum and minimum. This is really just a complete the square question. It's just a fancy way of asking you to complete the square. Okay, so let's say we complete the square and we end up with something which looks like 14 take away 2 bracket x add 1 all squared. Then the maximum value would be 14, and it happens when x equals -1. Okay, don't forget to write down these answers. If it asks specifically for the maximum value, make sure you write it and when it happens. Not like what people did last week. Lastly, number 8, find the inverse function. Well, start with y equals, and then just rearrange your formula to get x equals. And then remember to write your inverse function down. The second one's a wee bit harder. Write it as y equals. Now this time, because you've got a fraction, we're going to have to cross multiply. So do your cross multiply, tidy it all up, you'll get x equals. Don't forget to write down your inverse function. And that's it this week.